dreamers, doers, and rule breakers. People who try new things, take risks, and break the mold. Wins or stumbles, that's how the world shifts. This is How It Shifts.
Welcome to another episode of How It Shifts. Today on the topic of meaning, not just work. My name is Tine Bieber and my guest today is Robert Vogt. And I'm very happy to have you here, Robert.
Thank you, Tine.
He's a digital strategist and has been also exploring the topic of new work and the future of work and how we can do things differently in terms of ways of working and building organizations for quite a while. Robert, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we're diving into this very intriguing topic today.
Yeah, sure. First off, thanks for having me, Tina. I'm really happy to be here as well. As you said, my name is Robert. I work at Smartiv in Switzerland. I've been here for a bit more than 9 years now. When I started here, we were like 6 people straight from university, or more or less straight from university, who just love to code and to write software. And with time, we grew. Today we're 30 people over 3 locations. It's Zurich, St. Gallen, and Chur in Switzerland. So we had to find a way how to create an organization and a company over these years, because we really didn't know what we were doing in the beginning, and had to find something that we enjoy, every day.
Well, I understand. And what does that mean, enjoying every day, right?
Well, there's the classic sentence one of our founders usually says, that it's that he has to be happy to come to work on every Monday, or not every Monday, but most Mondays. And I mean, it's really a huge cliche, but I think if you're happy to come into work, let's say 40 out of 52 Mondays, we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, but you're right. I've heard it actually from a couple of people already who suffered panic attacks on a Sunday night, or, maybe also lighter versions of it. But I get that part. I think that's good motivation, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, I feel like we're in times where everything is kind of accelerating to an extent that it's almost impossible to keep up with, to put it in kind of easy words. And I feel even more people turn to, they're looking for something, what gets them out of bed in the morning, and is my life really having meaning right now? So despite everything happening, what we have to deal with on a global level, staying sane to a certain extent, we're also experiencing that in organizations a lot of times, right? So personally and professionally, there is a quest for purpose and meaning. And I would like to ask you, how have you witnessed that, or maybe experienced that yourself?
I think there are a couple of different aspects to that. One is, what are you looking for within the organization as an individual? And we were exploring for quite some time to find, a purpose, something that we give to society as a whole, or even to our region or something like that. And we've struggled a lot with that, to be honest, because at the end of the day, we write software and we have to make money so that we can pay salaries. So it doesn't, you work for huge corporations and you try to find a purpose or meaning in what you're doing there. But most of the time, if you're being honest, you just don't. So what we try to think of our purpose as is that we want to be the best employer that we could be for the people that are here at the company. And that means that we talked to people, and that's more or less an important context. We're self-managed and we operate on eye level. Around 25 out of the 30 people also own shares of our company. So they don't just work here, they are also part-time owners of the company. Sorry, I think the light just went out here. I'm back. And they want interesting projects. We have many software engineers, so they want a big challenge in their work. So we try to find interesting projects that are for maybe they come from companies that that we also can value, that we think that they provide something to society, and that's something that we can achieve to, you know, to make work interesting and fun, like the corporate rebels said, make work fun again. um but yeah, to this day we struggle to figure out what we can contribute to society with the skills we have and still make a living.
Hmm.
um and personally, I've seen that in myself, that I've started to struggle with the kind of work we do, and I'm wondering, hey, why are we doing this? And I'm always coming back to this. We do the work so that we can afford to create an environment that I like to be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and maybe it's not that bad after all, right? Like so maybe where I'm coming from, right? I mean, you
Mm,
know my story, but our audience doesn't yet. Um, so I'm also coming out of the self-management space, and I was working in oil and gas for a valve supplier.
yeah.
So warehouse, engineers, like very diverse team, also like very international, and we're like, okay, we need to do things differently, and we need to find our grand purpose to transform this industry from the inside out. And we were working with holacracy
Mhm.
and would organize around purpose and all these kind of things. And then we would go further with the for-purpose enterprise, and finally also having an attempt on implementing co-ownership. So, I mean, it was implemented. It just didn't do the trick that we hoped for. And what I felt like we had an increasing kind of, so I'm talking about a journey also over like 5 years, and we had an increasing kind of, it was almost a competition of purposes. Like we had our day-to-day, we're a valve supplier, so we
Mhm.
needed to have our sales. And on the other hand, we had like this great and grand aspiration of how to change this industry from the inside out. It wasn't ideal.
Mm,
And this gap, it became increasingly wider, and people also, they started actually like, yeah, I mean, like some people just starting getting disconnected from themselves emotionally so much that they were burning out. I was one of them, right? And so my thesis today is, I'm saying we're trying so hard in organizations, like providing the sense of purpose and meaning, and creating the structure for it, like hence self-management or whatever we want to use, right? But is that really doing the trick, or are we actually intervening in individual identity to a certain extent, really crossing lines? So my thesis today is, I call it inner freedom, like the
mhm.
sense of purpose, the sense of meaning we're having. Um, I mean, we can go deeper into that later, but I call it today inner freedom is practic. It's not a job title,
Yeah.
and it's not coming from. It's not a delegated form of doing things, because also when we're like changing structure, it's also an external kind of force doing that to you. It can help and support it, but it's not doing it. So we
Mhm.
still have a shift that is happening individually, or people feeling free individually, feeling purpose, which is this kind of intrinsic, like it's an intrinsic drive, it's an intrinsic kind of, like you want something. It's almost a need for some people, right? And
Mhm.
I bet you are one of these people, and I'm also one of these people, right? But truthfully, I was like looking back, because I'm currently also in this phase, like I'm looking at like where I want to work right now. So I'm coming out of like self-employment and like startups and partner at an organization. Like I always felt like I had like structurally like all my freedom, and I also felt always very free.
Yeah.
So I had to look at my own biggest fears, like would I compromise my freedom or my identity if I would now work for, let's say, a corporate, for example? And that was a fear I've had like for years.
Yeah.
And then I was like looking at it, and I'm like, truthfully, looking back, I never had to compromise that fear, because I always felt pretty free from the inside. And I could, what that means is act, according my own integrity, my own values, my own vision, my own perspective on life, and it had always immense impact, and it didn't matter in what kind of environment.
Hmm.
So
Well, I think it's a really interesting thought. Um, I mean, it also plays into, you mentioned identity and
mhm,
self-identity kind of. I
mhm,
think it also plays into that. What do you what parts of your identity do you value most, and what factors play into that? And we were having this discussion a lot, related to work, with a couple of friends and colleagues as well. Many people struggle with the thought that they identify with the kind of work and the job they're doing, but I mean, we have studies that show that it's a huge part of your identity, and I think that's okay. And sometimes, you know, you just take things for granted. You've been doing the work that you had been doing before for a couple of years as well. I've been doing this for almost a decade, and it takes a lot of time and effort to reflect upon how big of a part it is of yours, and if it's still the part that you want it to be.
mm.
So I think freedom is something that's, or inner freedom, as you call it, is huge in that regard.
And it's a never-ending journey, right? It's like a
Yeah,
muscle you keep
yeah.
training, and also identifying yourself, like, because I was also looking back, why was I like, I was, when I left that organization, I felt like a piece of my identity stayed there.
Hmm.
It was, I
Yeah,
left, and it was like it was pulled out of me because I over identified to a certain extent as well, right? Like also boundaries blurred and these kind of things. Which it doesn't have to be bad. I'm not saying that. It just hurt a lot. So there was a whole grieving process
yeah, yeah,
afterwards.
yeah.
Um, but there's also two parts to it. Like some people in our organization, in particular engineers, they didn't really care too much about that big purpose of the organization. They were more interested in their own craft, right? So
Yeah.
they were so going to Viktor Frankl, right? Different paths to meaning. So some people also, I talked to like another self-managed school in Berlin. They're like, the teachers are really identifying with their craft. They didn't care
Yeah.
about what was happening on like the organizational level too much. Obviously, they wanted to have a good environment to work in, but they also
Yeah.
wanted to be left alone.
So what part was it that you kind of felt that you left behind? Was it the purpose of the organization that you thought was what you identified with, or was it the organization itself?
Well, I think it was almost. I think I was grieving a part that was potentially not even like the most authentic part of my identity,
Yeah.
because when it was like leading up to that to that peak moment, what I can say now in hindsight, where I really felt disconnected emotionally from myself, I would over identify with that purpose of the organization, and everything we were doing for that purpose was good, right? So
Mhm.
your own needs would be on the back seat, and that's how this disconnection is then accelerating over time. And it's almost, you're like creating this cult, right? Like this cult, and then you try to align in language, you try to align in all these kind of things, and then out of the sudden individuality is out of the window, and then you are not equipped anymore for like complex solution finding. But worse is like, you are just disconnected from yourself, you are the one suffering and kind of like, paying the costs. And I'm not doing finger pointing, because I was
No,
one
no,
of the
no. Yeah, yeah,
drivers,
yeah.
right? I was one of the drivers. Like, I really believed in creating a better ways of working, like, but there's a lot of idealism in it as well, right? But purpose and meaning is always playing a very central role, because somehow it feels like it's like the medication that can just save us.
Yeah. And I also think that's something I've observed quite a couple of times now. The stronger people identify with the purpose and the more meaning work gives them, the more the boundaries. Sorry. they can blend, as you said before. The more you give
Yeah.
into work, the bigger part it gets of you or becomes of yourself, and I think that's a really good thing until you decide that you don't want to be part of that organization anymore, because then what happens is what you're saying: you leave part of yourself behind. You're suddenly not an inside person but an outside person, and
Mm.
at in that moment it can get a bit difficult also on a social level between the individuals. And I think that's something that I've observed more in these organizations that are so tightly knit and so um, also purpose driven and as close. I mean, I don't know how it's in the Netherlands or English speaking countries, but in Switzerland, like these family
Mm.
namings for companies, that's quite huge. You know, if you join us, we're a big family and we look out for each other and all that stuff. But I mean, yeah, we've read all more than enough papers and articles about how difficult that narrative can become eventually. And I
Well, it
think it's
should be alarming.
yeah,
Alarming
absolutely.
alarm bell should go off then,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. True. Well, you said earlier that the engineers were different. That's something that I had observed in our organization as well. I think it's 2 or 3 years back that I was invited to a discussion about failure culture and feedback culture in
Mm.
organizations, and it was a really interesting evening. And as one of our engineers joined as a guest as well, and he rarely joined these events because he, well, you know, he was a bit cliche. He'd rather write code than attend social networking events. And afterwards, he came to me and he was like, "It's crazy. I never realized how many things we're doing in that regard." And for me, that was quite eye opening because I thought it was quite obvious why we were doing all these feedback loops and why we try. I don't know, we have a format called Fuck Up of the Month where we share
Mm.
failures and mistakes openly with everyone. I was like, and to him, it was just, yeah, that's something we've been doing, but I never really thought about why we were doing this. And there was
Mm.
a moment I realized, hey, not everyone spends as much time thinking about our organization as I was at the time.
Did you ever ask him why he works there?
I never actually asked him, but I have a thesis as well about it, and we're one of his first employers actually.
Mm.
And well, let's be honest, his brother works for us for a decade now, and he was the one who told us, "Hey, I want to hire my brother. Can we do that?" So we did it, and yeah. But
Yeah.
you see, the thing I'm saying about cults and tightly knit groups, that's also on my experience. It's
Mm.
all really good if you work with your brother, with your friends, um, but it can also become difficult.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. Um, and we have also seen this, right, constantly on all levels, like how these lines, how these
Yeah,
boundaries are blurring. And I think we were just not like, there was a time I would like promote this kind of one life approach. No, we only have one life, there are no boundaries between like professional and personal life. And at that time I didn't have a family yet, right? So
yeah, yeah,
it's like very natural boundaries are coming in that you need to honor, otherwise it's going to break your back.
yeah, yeah,
But because you cannot, like, it's just too much of a stretch constantly, right? And emotionally going in there and trying to understand that is just like, yeah, it gets too much. But what is a healthy way to work with it?
I don't know. um, I mean, what I do, I tend to give too much and to spend too much time on that. So my lines are blurred as well, definitely.
Mm.
And it takes me a lot of reflection. It takes me a very good coach who helps me with these reflections. I've done also therapy, which helped me to figure out what was important at which point for me and how to respect my own boundaries. I have a brilliant partner at home who is able to tell me 4 weeks before I realize that I'm nearing my limits again.
Mm.
Um, and that's a constant game of knowing when you have more than enough energy to invest and when it's time to give other space to take initiative. But
Mm.
I don't really have an answer to that on an individual level. It's a journey, it's a learning process. Sometimes I'm better at it than other times. So I don't know.
Mm.
Do
Yeah,
you
but
have an answer?
I mean, it changed over the years drastically, right? Because in the beginning, I also truly believed there's like one purpose, and we went on these kind of journeys to actually like discover this one purpose, like this one life purpose, practically. And for me, it's been like breaking down. So breaking down boundaries to connect worlds. So it's
Mm,
very, you can put it anywhere, but over the years I found it very limiting, and I was like thinking like, but that can't be it. Like there is not just one purpose. Plus also, don't forget about all that pressure that is put on a purpose to on a
hmm
person to find this one purpose. We see an entire generation also like struggling in very very early years, like in the beginning of their 20s or even earlier, to burn out because they want to have meaning and purpose in their life, to do something meaningful. But a lot of times people start to isolate themselves then as well, because they want to find like, okay, this is the thing I need to do. This is the organization. I cannot go to this organization because they might not be value aligned or this and that. But what is then happening? Like there is like taking consciously the movement out. But I believe we only, like we only strengthen purpose through experimentation, right?
mm,
It's all a journey. It's all like an ongoing kind of journey until we will say bye and leave this world, in my opinion. Um, what I like is there's some research of the group of, like Radical Purpose, Jose Leal from California, and practically they look at purpose as like, we have different kind of human needs, and there's like very, like the most obvious ones. We need different kind of food, different kind of exercise, sleep and stuff, but also a certain amount of creation, sense making, impacting, and we need different amounts of different things, right? So where is our own personal equilibrium? And that changes in terms of the
yeah.
periods of the time we are in. It's not a linear process. We are never in the same kind of state of mind, or we have reached this enlightening moment. I don't believe in that too much, because for me, it's like, well, that's an ideal situation. But we live in a world, if we want to stay connected to that world, like there is no ideal because it's in movement the entire time. So sometimes you feel more connected to yourself and sometimes not. So I see it as like an ongoing experimentation, an ongoing journey of trying things and just checking in with yourself, and also training the muscle of values. Like you
Yeah.
don't need it obvious, like you don't need it written down in an obvious way, right? It's a feeling you're checking into. If you feel that peace of mind and you can sleep at night, I think you had a good day, like
Yeah.
you made the right decisions. um, but also that you have days it's just not working that way, but then you're aware like, oh, it happened this in this way, that's why.
Yeah.
And having, like multiple purposes coexist in your life in different kind of contexts. You might have different purposes, and that's
Absolutely.
cool.
And as you say, they change. For us, the most obvious one was people became parents. I mean,
Mm,
when we started the company 14 years ago, I think we were all early to mid 20s. Nobody had family. People were living with their friends in sharing rooms in apartments. And I think it was 2019. No, I know it was 2019 when I became a father, and my son was the first kid in our organization. And I
mm.
think in the summer 2025, we surpassed 20 children in the organization.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, within
Yeah.
6 years. And you could feel how that affected the people. Before that, like every Thursday night, we just stayed longer, had a couple of beers and pizza because, it was the best life we could have at that time. And suddenly, nobody wanted to join these happenings anymore because they knew they'd rather go home and kiss their kids goodnight than
Mhm.
to stay for another evening which would be the same as, the 400 times we've done it before.
Yeah.
So the purpose and the priorities of the people shifted, and that's we had these discussions after COVID as well with other organizations who were crying that nobody was coming back to the office anymore, nobody joined team events anymore, nobody invested time into reflection anymore, and we were always saying, hey, things have changed. You can either think, or you can either grieve that things have changed and that they are not the way they were before, or you
Mm.
can accept the change and think about how you can improve and adapt to the change now. And that as well, it's a constant journey. It's trial, as you said, trying and experimenting, and adjusting when you realize that what you've changed is not the same anymore.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
mean, as I said, children, that's the obvious one, right? But there are so many other things that happen as well in life. COVID was the other one. It
Yeah.
changed so many things for organizations and people around the globe.
Yeah, and there's like a really interesting part in it. It's like a constant reinvention to a
Hmm.
certain extent, right? This reinvention, but also this adaptation to life, the adaptation to life. Because I mean, we don't know what's going to be happen during the next 6 months or a
Yeah,
year, right? Let alone, and there's also like you might think tomorrow, or I don't know, you want to pursue a completely different journey. I would, like totally like cheer for you as I would for any other of my friends, because I think this is amazing. This is what life is about.
yeah,
We're not stuck on this one journey that felt right in like one moment of our time, but we are allowed to reinvent ourselves. And a friend of mine, Lais, I talked to her last week, and she was like, we're like talking about our journeys, and I told her something. She was like, okay, Tina, just stop for a moment. Now, reflect. You have been hacking your life, your professional life, and your personal life so many times during the last decade. Isn't that beautiful? And I'm like, actually, you're right. And I think that's like, it feels like I've lived multiple lives, but that brings the beauty, right? This kind of different contrasts, and just like making it colorful for ourselves, because every time we hack our life, so to say, how Lais would say it, or reinvent ourselves, we are expanding again, right?
hmm
And I think the same is true for organizations,
hmm
just another social system.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't really want to go into the topic of AI, but in the software industry, you see that AI changes everything now, and companies need to adapt and think about, hey, how does it affect us, and what does it mean for us? Do we need to change? If yes, what do we need to change? And I was so happy with a strategy session last week, I think, in our organization. And we actually looked at the purpose and vision and mission that we had defined a couple of years ago. And it just didn't matter. We realized, well, the premises that we're working on now, but they don't change no matter what happens with AI. It changes what we do and how we do it,
Mm-hmm.
but the purpose of the organization will stay the same. And that was really good to see.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing kind of epiphany, right? Because
Yeah,
and to have that clear in front of you as well,
yeah,
because there is so much uncertainty, there is so much doubt, so much black box.
absolutely.
So actually being reminded also on like, okay, wait a minute, like we as human beings here are coming together,
Yeah,
and we're connected, and we're here for a reason. Yeah, we need to hear that, I think, more than once in a
yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's, I really believe, I mean, the energy comes from the social system, as you said. And I remember one of my first bosses that I had, I don't know, 15 years ago. No, it's probably more now. Um, I learned so many things from him. And he was the one, we had one huge client. And I
Mhm,
asked him, I think I was 18 or 19 at the time. And I was like, hey, if they don't renew the contract for next year, what are we going to do? And he was like, hey, we have so many good people here. We have such a great team. We just rent a house in Italy. We go there for 2 weeks. And I promise you, we come back with a new concept, with a new platform, with a new business plan, whatever. but we'll come back with a solution. And he told me this in such a confidence that I just believed him. I was like, yeah, all right, I trust you, and you're right. I mean, now we work just for this one client as a group, as a team, and it's a lot of fun. So why shouldn't we be able to adapt to circumstances that we can't really control? And it's, the story, I remember it 15 years later, almost every month, because I'm always like, hey, yeah, we can do this as a group, and I'm convinced of this.
So what's the essence that that can make that work, you think?
I think one of the most important aspects is that you really can be part of the group as yourself. Um, when we turned to management and self-organization, we thought a lot about what are we going to do with people that are not used to being this proactive, that are used to being told what they have to do every single morning. And we were like, hey, we want to be an organization that has place for everyone, no matter how much initiative they want to take or don't want to take, because life's different for everyone. Some people have kids at home and want to be home at 5. Other people work best at 3 in the morning, and people should just be able to be who they are in this organization. And if they are accepted for who they are, and their social needs, their human needs are met in this
Mhm.
group, I think this is the foundation of that.
And how do you do that? Because like to nurture different kind of needs in a social system, as we know, is not the
Mm.
easiest part, right? And it also comes with a lot of individual honesty, right? Like where are your boundaries? Until what point can I go, or what do I really need? And how do I still stay connected and contribute to the collective?
Well, that's a hard question.
I know, and
How do we actually do it?
I asked this question also to a professor, and he's like,
Yeah, yeah,
if we would know, we would have solved a lot of, like world's greatest challenges.
yeah, yeah.
But we can explore. Yeah.
I think one aspect is that we don't take work too seriously. It's important to us that we ship software that is high quality, that actually works. And apart from that, it's important to also have fun where we are. Something that I had never experienced before for former employers was like, hey, you don't have to do overtime, because if that happens, that you should, like, that we expect it of you, we've made a mistake, we've planned it wrong, or something like that, and that's not your individual error. That's something that we as a collective have to improve upon. And also, we had clients. I had a client once that wanted me to take off the digital platform on Christmas Day. And
Okay.
I just said no. I was like, "Hey, that's my time off." And he was like, "Can someone else do it?" I was like, "No, it's Christmas Day. Nobody's going to do it." So we always clearly value these individual needs higher than our clients' needs. I'm sorry for that. I know that many people in customer experience are like, customers come first and all that, but we actually value these boundaries. And I mean, the result was we took the platform on the 23rd of December, and
Oh,
nobody cared. It was just, it was that. And I think the second part is being role models. People, our founders, they share how they feel, how they failed, how they improved, and all that. And sometimes, you know I always, yeah, I don't want to, but I tend to overstep lines sometimes. So I also overshare.
mhm.
Um, but it also gives people security that they know, hey, it has place here. So I went through a divorce a couple of years back, and everyone here knew the story, and they knew how I felt. They knew when the time I had a panic attack, and everybody knew afterwards because I
Mhm.
told them that, at that day, that time, everything was too much for me.
Mhm.
And that was also bring part of my very vulnerable personality that I don't show too often, that I showed then. And that gives people the trust to also share and show when they're not at their best.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I mean, being there as a person and not just a worker.
Yeah, and I mean, you also practice again like this kind of integrity muscle, right?
Yeah,
And values, and that helps other people to do the same. Because what we've been like observing in organization, also in a lot of like, or maybe above all, in a lot of like leadership roles, is that people don't do that, right? Because there is like a certain norm of things you have to do, and then integrity is out of the sudden out of the window.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
things are being said and or well intended but not put into practice. But if they are not in behavior, then they are not seen, then they are not lived.
Yeah,
So yeah, I get that. And it also gives like a different perspective on life, right? Because here we see like the personal as well as the professional getting married, so to say,
yeah,
because you're not a different person at home that than you are at work.
absolutely. On the other hand, it also makes it difficult, as we said before, to leave,
Yeah.
because if someone decides to leave that social system that is so close, it's always a personal hurt as well. It's not just a professional one because
Mm.
it's married together so strongly.
Yeah, it's true. And I think like there's no perfect kind of solution out there. I think
No, 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 no.
um, we're all out there to like flow through these kind of different organizations and different kind of projects and such to get to know ourselves better in life. And sometimes it hurts a little more, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah,
But I would also be like surprised if it would not hurt like sometimes, then I would also be like, was I really there, like what really happened? But you get better. I mean, this may be like put into stupid words, because you change. Like when I went to the next one and I would leave, the conversations were differently, they were differently open, they were differently again. So it does change, and it just like gets to know you like new facets.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's like one thing, if you would tell people today, like if we look at this like, generation that is coming after us. Jesus, we're getting old, huh?
We are. We
No,
definitely are. Yeah.
I refuse to think that. But there's an entire generation out there. They are looking right now for getting into their first job. They are going maybe through their first like actual life crisis, like early life crisis, and looking for this purpose or meaning in their work and in life. Like what would you tell these people?
Well, I think these people are doing really well. What I read is that they, I mean, it's always those rather negative takes on the next generation. They only want to work 4 days a week. They only want to work, part time. They value work life balance and so on. But I think that's the right way, isn't it? I mean, um, at the end of the day, if you want a healthy balance, you do something that gives you meaning. That doesn't have to be work necessarily, but what work has to achieve is give you money to actually being able to live. And thinking about, hey, what is what I want to do, and what does it take that I can survive doing what I want to do. I think that's a really healthy thought process that we didn't do when we decided on a career path.
No.
So I'd say, hey, I believe you're doing really well. Keep doing what you're doing.
Nice. And take
Um,
it with lightness, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
possible.
I mean, I think currently it starts way earlier than the 20s. I'm looking at my son in school. He started school last summer, and I think work has changed a lot in the last 30, 40, 50 years, and it'll change even more in the next 10, 20 years.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering what our school system does to help young children prepare for that kind of world of work that they will get to know in 15 to 20 years.
And it's, I mean, your son is 6, right? Or 7?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
6.
6 turning
Yeah.
7 soon.
Yeah. So Malou, my daughter, is she's turning 4, and in the Netherlands, school starts at 4.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy, like the choice we have in terms of schools here in Amsterdam, right? You're like really looking into, okay, what is the best school? And I have to say, like, I was not really too worried about it, but then I would talk to like other moms, and everybody was like busy, like already since like 8-9 months, to choose the schools where they really want the children to go. And so you're not leaving things for much surprise, like, I mean, obviously, like choosing a school, I understand. But at the end of the day, is it really so crucial? Like, because the idea we have for the perfect school of our children might
Yeah,
not
yeah,
be their
yeah.
idea of the best, and they will find out over the next couple of years. But this is with everything, right? With everything what we do, like everything we try to, like, friction needs to go out, like everything we like try to smoothen to a certain extent.
Hmm.
Whereas the friction and the edges actually form us and give us, I think, that kind of natural purpose
Yeah,
to go to our next step, to the next direction. But now, dude, I mean, we're not gonna open that Pandora box about like social media and stuff. But that scares the shit out of me, by the way,
yeah,
like for my child. So I hope until then there's like more regulations there and stuff, because but the choice is there in everything, and it's huge. And then you're like, how do you navigate that? Right.
yeah,
And that's why I understand that people are looking for somewhat like an
yeah.
anchor that gives, to a certain extent, orientation and direction. But all this, like, is really about, like, okay, in myself, right? Like, take a deep breath and not, the decisions we make today, they're not going to define you. They're not going
Absolutely.
to define. You can always reinvent yourself. You can always change direction. And I think we need to normalize that
Yeah,
in every age.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And you know, what you said about school and how it affects the kids is not what we expect them to do. I agree 100%. We just in organizational design, right? We act upon assumptions, and
Mhm.
whether they turn out to be true or not is something that we have to wait and see.
Exactly. And this gap between, like, in organization design, it's very visible, right? You have the
Mhm.
intent of the design, and then to the gap to the lived
Yeah,
experience. Plus, if you look into an organization, and it doesn't matter if you have 10 or 10,000 or 100,000 people, you will have multiple different kind of experiences of people.
yeah,
There's not one truth and one reality. And the same
absolutely.
is true for school and everything else.
Yeah. And we're still, no matter how big the organization is, it's always a social system.
Hmm.
So maybe you're surrounded with people that works really well for you. So you feel, I don't know, welcomed and loved within your social system. And you have a relation to the person you're talking to or reporting to or whatever, or you don't.
Hmm.
But that's only the truth for yourself and not for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, and again, like when I talk to Lais, she would call it like these invisible, fabrics of life, like these invisible kind of strings that keep us
Hmm.
together. They make us connect. And I think we got so trained and so good in like numbing all that, right? And working like machines and stuff. But that's obviously like not making us healthy, and making us burn out or emotional disconnected, whatever. But training that, I think, is just like life is giving us a really good timing and opportunity to do that while we are partnering with AI,
Mhm.
and trying to explore our own superpowers that are exactly there and very unique.
Mhm.
Yeah, beautiful. Would you like to share anything else?
Don't take work too seriously, no matter what age you're at. It doesn't really matter that much. It
Yeah.
can be wonderful, it can be with amazing people, it can give you lots of meaning, but if it doesn't, that's okay as well. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think I think that would be my last thought about, the last 45 minutes and what sticks with me.
very nice. And I will carry that home and to my husband tonight. Bedtime stories. Thank you so much, Robert. And how can our audience find you best?
I think they probably can find me best on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
or in St. Gallen if someone is close to Eastern Switzerland.
Sounds good. Well, it was a blast having you. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you as well, Tine.
our conversation will continue anyways.
Definitely.
All right.